You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower in Northport, Florida. This is John Rawlings, your host of Realtalk Radio 97.5. And I've got a very, very, very special guest in the house who has a lot of great information coming our way, Mr. Billy Carlson. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, sir. How are you?
Good. So, kind of real quick, because you've been on the show and you're steady at what you do. Just give a highlight of what your position is at the city and how long you've been with us.
I'm coming up actually on 2 years as the Public Works Community Outreach Coordinator.
Fantastic. So, you text me and said, I have a lot of good information. So, we never talk about this stuff before we get onto the show. I'm going to let you open that can of worms. So what's the first big topic that you want to get out to the residents of Northport about what's happening in City Hall and Public Works?
So the big news we have is actually the most breaking news. Over the weekend, we had the final scoop of vegetative debris at the Toledo Blade debris management site was taken out, removed from the city. And with that, we have now gotten rid of all almost 2.5 million cubic yards of hurricane debris. So that was 2.3 million vegetative debris, another 230,000 C&D debris, nearly 400 of the uprooted stumps that you've seen along the city's roadsides have been removed. And as of Saturday morning, all of it now has been removed from the city. So we've got a few final steps. They've got to get some heavy equipment removed from the sites. The Orlando Boulevard site where C&D was, we had opened up one side. They were doing a little bit of road work on the other side to open that up. But as of now, it is open to traffic in both directions.
I just did it today myself. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. That's my shortcut.
So, tomorrow is 5 months to the day after Hurricane Ian, made landfall here and did quite a number on the city of Northport. And it's kind of fitting that, just shy of the 5-month mark, we have hit one of our big milestones in getting rid of all of the debris that was collected as a result of Hurricane Ian.
And I didn't ask you this ahead of time, but for our debris for a city, how much do we normally do without a hurricane event?
Not anywhere even close. To put it like this, and we've made this comparison before. Hurricane Irma, as massive as that storm was, I think at the time was like the largest Cat 5 hurricane to hit the U.S. It was big enough to cover the entire state. In this area, I think it was 50,000 cubic yards of debris. I mean, we don't approach that typically. And in our bulk pickups, the yard waste pickups, we did the comparison. I don't remember the comparison earlier on in the storm collection efforts, but we're looking at like 4,000 or 5,000 yards a year in yard waste pickup. So, I mean, this was way beyond anything we've experienced. Even if you discount what happened with Price Boulevard and the waterways being washed out and the significant flooding, even if you set that aside, just the amount of debris and tree debris and home debris is beyond anything we could have possibly dreamt up, for sure.
What type of stressors does that? I say this to you because there are so many external components that work with a hurricane scenario, because we had contracted trucks on our roads too.
Right.
But there's still a coordination that has to take place to manage all of our resources along with all the external components that we have contracted in because of the removal of the Hurricane Ian type hurricane scenarios. What does it take, and what kind of stressors does that put on public works as a whole?
Right.
And how do you guys handle that?
So I will say this: the coordination with the storm cleanup and everything like that. Our main point of contact with our contractors was solid waste manager Frank Lama. And I don't think for the first month after the storm, I don't think I saw more than maybe 2 minutes in passing. And it was at the end of the day, he's coming back in. He's been out there since 6, 7 a.m. And, he's coming into the office to grab something in his office and go. And, hey, Frank, see you, Frank. And that was pretty much it. So there's a tremendous amount of work that's gone into that. And I believe it was almost 2 months before I really had a chance to sit down with Frank and kind of go over everything that was going on with the debris cleanups. A lot of it was just over the phone, text messages. Hey, Frank, where's this at? Where's that at? That kind of thing. And coordinating with them as well. Tricia Wisner, our assistant public works director, who joined us in July, also got kind of thrown in the fire 2 months into the gig, and Hurricane Ian hits, and it just coordinating that and trying to coordinate the contractors that we had working on Price Boulevard, and trying to coordinate the supplies and everything for getting the street lights back up and getting street signs and stop signs and everything else back up. And now we've got our leadership over here coordinating getting all the drainage systems repaired and everything like that. When you're talking about the retention ditches that move water from neighborhood to neighborhood on out to the Mayakahatchee and things like that. So it's been a nonstop effort. For 5 months, it's still ongoing. Our drainage crews are still working hard to bring things back to where they were, before the storm, and obviously try to improve them so that we're better prepared for the next storm.
How are we addressing post storm, post cleanup? How are we addressing making things better for the next hurricane event, whether it's this large or smaller? How are we addressing some of the needs that we've now, and I say this because I don't hear a lot of negative, but there's always things you can improve on, things that you can streamline, things that you can manage differently. How are we addressing those as the city goes? What are you guys doing at Public Works? Are you addressing those internally so you can get a better plan into place, a smoother transition?
Well, I think part of it is having experienced something like this now. I mean, you experience a hurricane that does the level of damage that Hurricane Ian did, and caused kind of the disarray that we saw. Trying to coordinate everything with all the flooding and everything happening like that. Experiencing something like that. What the next time we have, let's say, tropical storm Elsa, that did significantly less, but did flood the estates. Maybe we're better prepared to handle something like that and coordinate something like that. And a lot of it is just now we've got a pretty good idea of what worst case scenario is. So we are just going into it better prepared, for these kind of things. As far as what can be done better, that's part of the price widening project is determining how we can better harden the waterway crossings. We've seen at the water station down by the Winn-Dixie on Northport Boulevard, they made a better effort to kind of harden the shoreline there around that water control structure where we saw it wash out and everything like that. And I think one of the other things too, we had a couple strike teams that got called in as part of the emergency ops. Immediately after, and they had a lot of good intel and a lot of good things that we were able to pick up and feed on as we went forward, and those are the kinds of things we'll be able to implement going forward if it happens again. Obviously we don't want that to happen, but we've got a better understanding now of how can we better request supplies. Our whole supply request system improved just as we were going. initially after the storm. We had a system and it was working, but maybe not as efficiently as it could. And the strike teams that have, experience with this on a larger scale than we had dealt with before, were able to say, hey, you're doing this and that's fine, but why don't we try this and streamline it just a little bit more? And so things like that, we'll be better prepared for, going forward. Again, ideally, we don't see another Cat 5 just monster hurricane that sits over us for 8 hours.
Please. Um,
But in the event it does, we're a little better prepared.
I'm going to ask the people online right now. You see a post that's up there by William Chuck English. Uh, Please, if you're online right now and you're watching this video, put some kudos up there. It does mean a lot back to Public Works. Ask some questions. Vent a concern. Vent anything you want. I will post it up here, and really we want to have on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I do this show live out there for people because it's another way to get the information out other than the radio station. And if you're listening on the radio and you go to Real Talk 97.5 on Facebook, you actually can participate on Facebook and watch us live. We're live on the air, and absolutely we want participation from any of the listening audience out there, any citizens that may have had a concern during a hurricane, information seekers. Chuck is fabulous at this. I wish more people would really participate on the level that he does. It's amazing that we've been on the air doing these things. Even during the hurricane, we were doing this information type stuff out. And I received a phone call today, and one of the citizens in Port Charlotte missed the cutoff for FEMA by 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I know it's off topic a little bit, but it's not, because we share a lot of information, and we shared a lot of information about the hurricane and updates on the hurricane, or updates on pickup, updates on a lot of things that were out there happening in our community every month that you come on. And I want people to understand that you as a city, you guys get your information out on the internet, on social media. You're doing all those things, and we do the same thing with the radio station, because without City Hall doing it and without the radio station, there is no one else.
Right.
And so having people participate, put comments down, ask questions, it's a great thing. It's a great tool for us. I know it's a great thing for you. What's another update that you wanted to give besides? I still, that number still blows me away every time we talk about how much debris. And by the way, and I want you to address this real quick before you go on.
Okay.
Talk about the debris that's now set, and we talked about this the last time, but the debris that's out there that are in some of the commercial type properties.
Yes. So the commercial properties we have, I know, I actually just spoke with Frank about some of them off of Toledo Blade, I think a week or two ago. And, they worked with them to come up with, what it's going to cost to be able to pick those things up. The commercial properties, the for-profit businesses and stuff like that are actually not covered by FEMA. And so it's not like our average resident, who lives on Atwater or, lives out in the estates or anything like that. So those obviously residents were picked up for free, and FEMA doesn't want to see residents buried under the cost of having to have, debris removed. Commercial properties, it was on them. And, so it's on them to reach out and contact us to try to come to an agreement for it, or pay somebody else to do it. I know we did a bunch, I think, off of Commerce Parkway, which is back here, behind Toledo Blade, all those businesses back there. My understanding is we picked up quite a bit back there.
And
and
they're
they're
still
going to take
there.
that to the landfill, find out what the cost is, and build the businesses there.
Absolutely.
So that's been part of the difficult process is getting the large scale commercial landlords, for lack of a better word, on board with getting these properties taken care of. So something like Aiden Lane, we've got I don't know how many questions about Aiden Lane. That's over there by the Perkins and the auto shop over there and the ABC Liquor, whatever it is over there. It's up to the commercial property owner there to have it taken care of, whether that's getting another party or reaching out to Frank and saying, hey, what's it going to cost us to get this picked up?
Right. So Chuck comes up with another point. How are we dealing with the canals and the waterways themselves to try to get the debris out? And can you give an update on that?
So I don't have necessarily totals, but I do know that the airboat that we have that we typically go out to, spray the waterways and stuff like that for aquatic vegetation and stuff like that. They have been using that for some debris pickup. I've seen some photos of some big piles of stuff that we've been picking up from the waterways. So it is still very much an active effort to get those things picked up. We have a massive waterway maze through the city. We've got miles and miles of waterways here. So it is something they're working on. And along those lines, we have crews that are working on repairing the drainage in those areas and things like that to keep things moving. So it's very much an ongoing effort in the road and drainage district to continue to get these things, get the debris in the waterways picked up, and make sure that the waterways are functioning for drainage the way that they're supposed to as well.
And is there any projection on what's going to happen with the waterways and when that's going to be completed?
As far as picking things up,
Yep.
I do not have that offhand. No.
So I've got another Kathleen. Can't we demand private companies on Aiden to clean up the mess or fine them?
That I believe is up to code enforcement. I know Frank has advised that we pass these concerns along to code enforcement. Whether they are with them, I don't know offhand. It could be that they're writing them up and they still just don't. They just don't care to get it taken care of. I don't know.
So if we're at this level next month when we meet again, because you're on every fourth Monday of the month,
Right.
can you do some research on that, or at least have somebody come on with you to
Sure.
give an update?
Sure.
Awesome. That'd be great. Kathleen, great question. I love the participation. And Chuck, now you got somebody chiming in with you, buddy. But it's valuable to have the code enforcement department out doing their things too. But I don't want to say that we were laxed, but I think we gave more grace during this time frame than a normal set period, didn't we?
Sure. Yeah. And that's a part of we're all dealing with the same thing, and understanding that nobody really was spared by Hurricane Ian and the efforts it took. Some businesses didn't even reopen for 2 months after the storm, and we understand everybody's kind of dealing with the same thing. So it may be that they gave them a time frame. Somebody may have met with these businesses and gave them a time frame, but I don't have that information offhand.
Absolutely. And with the widening of Price Boulevard, uh, are we now looking at this storm that we had differently with now the widening of Price Boulevard? Are we looking at things strategically differently than we did prior to the storm?
For sure. For sure. So that was the next item on my list, actually, is the price widening project. We have an open house community meeting on Wednesday, March 15th from 6 to 7:30 at the George Mullen Activity Center. That's the community center over by City Hall. And so what that's going to be is a first chance for residents to get a look at what the roadway is going to look like, to get an idea of the project timeline. And so just offhand, some rough estimate dates, and obviously things can change. It may go a little bit quicker, it may take a little bit longer, but we're looking at the actual construction taking place starting in later 2024. And the reason for that is there are elements of the original agreed upon design that we are revisiting. And that's obviously things like the waterway crossings. So they're looking at how can we better harden these crossings
Yep.
for a system like this. And again, this is what I've told people and talking to people in person. It's almost better that we've experienced something like this before we start this price widening project, because if we had, say, done this 2-3 years ago, we're looking at a way more expensive fix. And how do we go about hardening these crossings now that we've already widened the project and everything like that? So we're looking at ways to harden the crossings themselves, looking at ways to harden the shoreline near these crossings, because that was a big part of the problem that we had.
That was
Up.
really a major problem.
Right. So the water coming over the bridge and washing out, the land around the crossings is what, kind of ruined the structural integrity of these crossings. And that's kind of why we saw the destruction that we saw along Price Boulevard. So things like hardening the actual structures themselves, hardening the shorelines, which is what we saw with the water control structure down near Winn-Dixie. What steps we can take to harden the shorelines there, what steps we can take further upstream to hopefully control the water flow a little better, so we don't just have this massive flow of water that just completely overtakes, the structures. As far as, and we were asked about it when we posted originally about the open house meeting, are they going any higher? Because they have to meet the roadway that already exists, there's not going to be too much of that where we make them higher, but the focus is definitely on hardening them. And so that design process, I think we have open until potentially spring of 24. And again, that's something, it may end up being quicker than that. It may end up being longer than that. These are just kind of a rough timeline at this point. That's what we're projecting.
Well, I'm going to ask a question on sheer volume of what happened with our canal system, sheer volume of water that came down through. And I've got to believe that we're planning and we're looking future forward on
Right.
a lot of things, and maybe better now than before, which is good. But I've got to wonder, to fix to the level of no flood with the amount of water that we took in, I don't know that we could put enough culverts in to hold that water. That water was coming down at levels I don't know that we've ever dealt with.
Right.
Now, and I know that Chuck's been around, and he talked about 92 this morning at coffee, and I wasn't here in 92, so I cannot go backwards in that time frame. But I do listen to what he says on those things. But I'm just wondering, just from the perspective of planning, could we ever really truly set in stone a plan for what happened with the sheer volume of water that came at us that day?
It's a tough topic. It's a tough conversation because again, I don't, there's, for a storm like this, it's not something many people have experienced. And before, I'll say I've lived here since 2011, and before Hurricane Irma, I had never even seen water approach my side of the neighborhood, out in the estates. I live on the east side of Sumter, and we'd seen a little bit of rain maybe a little bit of flooding at the end of Oman, but we had never seen it to the point where it came down to Salford on Oman. So Irma was like the first time where it was like, oh man, there's a lot of rain there. And then Tropical Storm Elsa, uh, 2 summers ago, was the first time we had seen it on a road. This like blew everything out of the water. Elsa was the highest I had seen it on my street. It was like 2 inches deep, maybe, for about 2/3 of the street. And this storm was just it. Our street was a foot under. I within an hour of the storm being here. And for a hurricane like this that brought the kind of water it did and just sat over us for the amount of time it did, I I don't know that you can make a guaranteed foolproof plan for that kind of watershed. Um, I'm sure all options are on the table, whether that's finding a way to widen, the canals and the retention ditches and things like that. I told my wife the other day we were going down Price towards the Narramore fields, towards the high school and everything, and I told her I can't now in my head go over that bridge by the high school and by the Morgan Family Center without seeing in my head the water over the bridge.
Right.
I'd never seen the water over that bridge ever, even not even close to it. And 2 days after the storm, the water was over the bridge, and I will never ever unsee that. Um, what is the fix for that? That is one thing we're looking at. That bridge, I believe, is part of what they're looking at as part of the price widening update. So the widening itself is supposed to be between Sumter and Toledo Blade, but they're also taking a look at that and how do we harden that and make sure that doesn't become an issue again. Because as we were moving EOCs around due to flooding and power loss, we we almost got cut off there.
Well,
We did kind of a scramble drill to move back to City Hall so we didn't get cut off over there.
so part of the problem with having this conversation is the water had to go somewhere.
Right.
And if we had everything wide open that day, and it was more, a lot of times it was more wide open than we wanted it to because water will find a way.
Right.
And there were, I can't, I, we dodged, actually, we didn't. Charlotte County dodged a major bullet on Hillsborough with the amount of water that could have gone down through by Kia.
Right.
And that canal and really up and down that whole area, nothing was slowed down. Everything was wide open.
Right.
Everything was flowing. But I got to tell you, if I'd have thrown a ball into the water on Hillsborough side, the swirling, I have it on video, the swirling event that looked like the your bathroom tub emptying out times a billion.
Yeah.
The amount of suction, it was a sound I haven't forgotten. Okay. And I keep wondering if we look at all of what could be possible, okay? Now people were still driving over those roads and still causing more damage and not really caring that if that would have broke free, I, I don't even know what kind of damage we would have been talking because it was almost like that was a retaining wall
Right.
that was holding the cocoa plum into place. And I got to tell you, I think that if that would have released and all that water had free reign down that, I can't even imagine what it would have been like living on those canals to hear that water start coming that way.
Right.
And we kind of experienced that with behind Winn-Dixie.
Yep.
And it water finds its way through barriers.
Absolutely.
And no matter what kind of hardening that we're talking about, I got to tell you, it'll be better than what we've ever had before when we're done. But that storm, I don't know that we are ever going to see anything like that again. Um,
Hopefully.
and they called it every 5 year storm. Hi, Laura. It's amazing out there what we've had to deal with, how we've had to go about it, and I love the fact that Public Works, you guys are actually dealing with the good, bad, and the ugly, because you're listening to all sides now, and truthfully, I believe you guys are punching this thing right in the nose, because you don't want to have a road built that is going to get taken out with a Cat 4 again, like it did.
Right.
And we've haven't we hardened those bridges up better than they were prior to the storm now?
We have, at this point, they're in better shape than they were, before the storm. There was a significant amount of work that went into restoring the shorelines, restoring the ground and everything beneath the actual structures themselves. To Chuck English's point there, the water control structure 106 is definitely more hardened now than it was before. They put, I think it was 100-foot sheet pilings down into the ground and capped off with cement, and that's keeping all the shoreline packed in, and should better withstand, the beating that shoreline took. It was a matter of, you've got all that rain, all that water, and it was heavy winds. You're talking Cat 5 winds. You can call it a Cat 4 if you want, but for all intents and purposes, it was a Cat 5. We know what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And for that shore to take that beating with that much water and that much wind, it eventually gave out. And so, now we've got the metal sheet pilings that are into the ground and capped off with cement and concrete and everything. And hopefully, that's something that should be better prepared to take a storm like that. Obviously, we hope we don't ever see that kind of storm again. I told my kids, I've lived in Florida 38 years and have never seen anything like that. And I hope they don't ever have to see anything like that again.
Well, and
Hopefully my kids get to 50 and can tell their kids, when we were kids, that was the worst we ever saw, and it never got worse. But we'll see.
yeah, well, payouts are, and I'm going to say this about arguing over Cat 4, Cat 5, but our federal government doesn't like Cat 5s because the payouts are a lot different at Cat 5 versus Cat 4, and
Sure.
there's a financial reason why they didn't name it a Cat 5.
Right.
And that's the farce of what happened there, and that's the reality of what happens when you can get away with it, is that the dollar amount didn't get transferred to the people again. It got transferred a different way. So they did their thing on the end of the dollar amount. But anybody who was here, anybody that saw the devastation, anybody that listened to the numbers, the reality is we had our Cat 5,
Sure.
uh, and I said Cat 5 from the start, uh, and I've never not called it a Cat 5. It's just our federal government uh, is under a rock. They should have been under the bridge. They would have realized it was a Cat 5, but that's the reality of what happens in these storms, and then the aftermath of dealing with it is left to a lot of the cities and what goes on, and just the sheer impact of what happened here, and we have a lot to be proud of. We have actually a ton to be proud of as a city that went through this, because they're south of us, they got hit hard too, harder than we did, and there's still struggles out there. I watched an update on a lot of their cleanup, and they've got the big mass trucks coming in doing the same thing they were doing here. It just looks like a mimic pickup. If you look at all the debris pickup here and you go every city south, it
Right.
just it looks like, oh my gosh, they got our game plan. only our game plan, I I have to believe that our game plan was a little bit more well oiled than some. And I don't want to say because we're a better city. I want to say because we weren't hit as hard as they were. So when you get hit harder, those things take just a little bit more time, not
Sure.
because you're not prepared, but because you have to get everything going. We didn't lose the capability of getting things going. We lost capability of not having the compound over off of Price Boulevard, and it kind of being hemmed in with trash pickup and different things like that. And you guys had to deal with that on a completely different level because access out really hurt you guys, didn't it?
Sure, sure. I mean, when you're talking about where we're at with the public works campus, we're between Chamberlain and Toledo Blade, and obviously we lost. I believe it's the Creighton Waterway, to our west or to our east, and then you go beyond Chamberlain, and we've got another one cut off there. So really, the only way out of Public Works is on Chamberlain, and that's north south, and that obviously, that affects things like our garbage and recycling collection and things like that. But the to your point about getting underway quicker and not losing that capability, obviously we saw a bit less damage than Fort Myers saw.
Yes.
And Fort Myers took the brunt of the storm. I think we all remember all the videos and everything like that of the water rushing through the streets and things like that. Um, but we had a plan in place. We had a plan with Ceres Environmental, and they were ready with a plan with Rostan Solutions, and so we were. Once the storm came through, it was a matter of when can we start? When can we get the truck certified and rolling? And it was a week later. I mean, the storm came through on a Wednesday, and on an ensuing Tuesday, the trucks were getting certified. They were ready to roll. The next Wednesday, we start collecting. And I think a lot of that has to do with the leadership here at Public Works being in tune with what we're going to need, and being with our contractors. We plan in the off season, so to speak. We start talking to them in March, April, May. Well, if the worst happens, how do we proceed? What do we get in order? What do we need to have ready to go? They had the site picked out, ready to go, ready to start within a week. And we can't say enough about Rostan and Ceres and all the contractors, all the truck crews and everything that came down and jumped right in. And at one point we had, I think, 70 or 80 trucks running around collecting, and it shows in the fact that within 3.5 months we were able to have everything picked up, and within 5 months of the storm we've got everything out the door. So
I still find it to be amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the hazmat debris and how we're handling the pickup of that? And do you know that we've had some major hazmat issues on pickup or getting rid of or testing?
as far as hazmat stuff, I don't think we had really a huge issue. We had people. Obviously, we put out very early on when you're putting out your debris, make sure you sort it out by material. All the hazardous waste, everything like that. To my understanding, actually, I just spoke with Frank about it at the end of last week. I'm pretty sure they essentially made one run through the city to pick up all the hazardous type waste, things like that. Um, to do it all in one shot. And it's very much like the hazardous waste events that we hold annually. Is they collect it all and then they take it to, uh, you know, a firm or somebody who is certified to handle that material and dispose of that material.
And so he's talking about, let's see, he's talking about storm debris in household.
Okay.
So
Uh,
was that
so
let's go back for a second. When you have and maybe I'll clarify his question with mine in conjunction with when you're doing construction and
Right.
you're doing your cleanup, that all is not really wanting to go into landfill nor or construction material they don't want going to the landfill. That's a
Right.
different type area. Were we breaking that down and dealing with that, or was there exceptions put into play for that?
So we did have our Orlando Boulevard site was entirely household debris. There was no commingling of debris. The debris management sites were completely different. Before they opened that site for collection, they did do a soil test, so they had a baseline to compare to. So all the household debris was taken to the Orlando Boulevard site, and that's just the construction type debris, drywall, shingles, any of that kind of stuff. Again, the hazardous waste, like we would normally take at our hazardous waste events, that was all collected separately, taken care of, disposed of separately. All the household waste, the C&D debris, all that stuff was taken to the Orlando Boulevard site. It had its own uh, removal site. I don't recall exactly where it was at. It might have been in DeSoto County. Um, but that all went to the same place that was separate from where we're bringing the vegetative debris. And then when they were done collecting all of that, they went out. They had, from my understanding, dozens of people out raking through the median on Orlando Boulevard to make sure we got everything. Before they opened it back up, they did another soil sample to make sure that we didn't have any leftover, issues with any of the material that had been left there, anything like that. So they did a soil sample to make sure that it compared well to the baseline sample. And then they went ahead and hydroseeded the median so the grass would grow back, and then we opened things back up.
Well, and that takes a crazy amount of I forced planning, I think. Because
Absolutely.
you had to take a strategic approach to what you were going to do with debris you had no plan for to begin with. You also had to plan for the damage it could cause to the environment, correct
Exactly.
that if need be, so that you and it's I love the fact that Chuck's asking the question, and I know he's huge on the environment, and the fact that we put into play prior to all this, and is that part of a standard that we followed with taking that soil sample? Or was that part of a game plan that was already in place, or was
Absolutely.
that okay? So that
Absolutely.
wasn't
And that's
developed within this storm.
that's yes, that's again, that's something that, they serious environmental and raw sand solutions, this is not the first time, they've dealt with things like this. And so that's why, as a city and as a department, we go to someone like that who's kind of the subject matter expert, and kind of lean on them and their experience with, okay, what do you need from us? What do we have to do? What's going to be this step? What's going to be that step? And they're well versed in what FEMA requires as far as picking up what's going to be the baseline for FEMA to cover everything. Things like that. That, I mean, they had basically all steps covered. And if I had a question for Frank and he wasn't sure on the answer, he reached out to them, and I would say 99 times out of 100 they had the perfect answer for us. So all of this was part of their process, part of the plan going in. There certainly wasn't any, okay, we've got a ton of C&D debris, what do we do with ourselves now? We had a game plan. It was just a matter of getting a site where we didn't have to worry about what, run off into local waters or anything like that. You find a place that's isolated enough, that has minimal impact on neighborhood traffic and things like that. And I think if you look at Orlando Boulevard, the streets immediately off Orlando, there's not a lot out there, homes wise. So
But
I
it's
think that
coming.
that was
It's
part of
coming.
the key, is
It's
is
coming.
finding that. So we had minimal impact on traffic. Some people lost their cut through there between Veterans and Price. but it was still accessible. You could take Price down to the end to Torrington and get around that way if you needed to. Um, but every day it was all part of the plan for sure.
Well, the funny thing is we always talk about growth and the planning and how we're structured to grow. And you just said some things there that, in 20 years, that area is going to be built up too. That's
Absolutely.
that's kind of where it's going. And I'm wondering, and this is not a conversational piece because it's it's 20 years out. But what is going to be the plan if that happens in that era when the houses in those areas are already built, they're already there? Because we
Right.
do have buildings out there, we do have houses down that way. We just don't have as many.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so it's going to be a challenge in the very near future, uh, of what we're going to have to face down the road. And Chuck and I and Mayor Langdon this morning, we actually talked about kicking the can down the road. So maybe some of that needs to be some foresight, not hindsight, and
Sure.
more action oriented versus reaction. But it's a tough call because you've got limited spacing out there that you can do anything like that because of how our city was set up prior to, with general development already dividing these pieces up. So
Right.
there may be something that has to be developed within, of what happens. But is there? And I can't believe that we're like 8 minutes till the end of the show, but because this really, like, I just looked at the clock and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But I want to thank everybody for participating. Chuck, Laura, with Damsel in Distress. Normally we have Kevin, who's fantastic about participating too. But anybody and everybody who is listening right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and the radio station 97.5 FM, thank you so much. I appreciate that. But is there any other little hot topics that you want to throw out there?
So two quick things we got coming up. Obviously, we spoke about March 15th is the open house for the price widening project. So if you want to get information, we're going to have our engineers there. We're going to have utility staff there to answer your questions. Neighbors that are directly on Price Boulevard. We have the temporary construction easement forms that need to be signed by residents directly on Price to use their property for construction there. So if you live on Price, please drop by, uh, sign the form, or at least pick up the form. If you want to have a lawyer read it, go over it before you feel like you're signing away a life or anything like that. I promise you're not. But feel free to stop in. If you're interested in the project, come in, stop in. The Saturday directly after that, March 18th, we're having the Hazardous Household Waste event from 8 to noon. It is at the Public Works campus, which is what we did in August. It worked out well, so we're going to try it again now that we have snowbirds in town for this one. That's 1850 West Price Boulevard. So you're going to use the Price Boulevard entrance to Public Works. And then the week after that, the 25th, is the Great American Cleanup. That's solid waste teaming up with Keep Sarasota County Beautiful. You can register. We have the link on our website through the community involvement page under Public Works. If you go to our social, we've got a flyer there with a QR code or the link to scgov.net/keep Sarasota County Beautiful. You can register there, choose Northport City Hall as your desired cleanup spot, and then we will see you out there that Saturday morning, again, March 25th at 8 o'clock, and we will get to cleaning up around the area.
And we're still doing a lot of things that we normally would do now, aren't we? And that
Absolutely.
I find it to be kind of weird to talk about normal
Right.
cleanup, normal things.
Right.
Uh, we've got about 5 minutes left. I want you to highlight uh, parks, the side of Parks and Rec that pertain to Public Works, such as what you guys do at the parks real quick, and also talk about the app.
Okay, so as far as parks goes, we actually have there's some things that the parks maintenance crew, um, it's beyond their scope, and that's where we step in and help out with things like that. But they've actually got a pretty phenomenal staff on hand in their own right to get things back up and running. Things like helping out in the Myakkahatchee Creek Park, where we have waterway blockages, things like that. Um, as far as the app, if you go to your Google Play Store, if you go to the iTunes App Store, North Report, it's free to download, free to use. You pull it up, say I have an issue, take a picture if you want. It's got if you leave your location data turned on, it'll, ping right to where you're at, and you can submit your request there. Hey, my street sign's missing. My stop sign was knocked over. We get not far from rainy season again. Hey, there was a big storm the other day, and it's been 5 days, and my swale isn't draining. Can you please come take a look? All those kind of things you can put in on the Northport app, and we will send somebody out to take a look as quick as we're able.
And I'm real quick highlighting on the screen Public Works website, uh, City Hall's website, Public Works. You go there. There's a lot of information that you can get from the Public Works webpage itself. You can also go where and get more information. What's your Facebook page?
So we've got facebook.com/the city of Northport. That's the direct address. You can look us up. It's the city of Northport government. On Twitter, if I can pull that up real quick. On Twitter, we are, where is it? We are at City of Northport on Twitter. I believe it is also at City of Northport on Instagram. You can find us on the Nextdoor app, City of Northport. So we're there. All the information that we put out on Facebook, we typically put out on Instagram if that's your jam. Put out on Twitter if that's what you prefer. I know some people are more Twitter people than Facebook people, and Instagram than Facebook, because you can just scroll through pictures and see friends and what's going on in your community without all the debate that necessarily comes on Facebook. And the Nextdoor app, there's typically a lot of helpful neighbors there on Nextdoor, and we're there as well to share our information there. We're also on LinkedIn. If you got a LinkedIn, that's more the business side of things. We've got job openings and job fairs and things like that. We share on there, and just generally highlighting employees that are doing well, our employees of the year, our service awards for employees that have been here 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, and so on.
Absolutely. So you guys actually try really hard to get that information out in a lot of different formats, and I just wanted to say thank you for doing all of that. Thank the staff for us, because it's really amazing that we're not getting the information out good enough, but it is all over the place.
Absolutely.
So
we do our best, whether it's social media. We try to spam across social media. We've got the website. We typically, any crucial information is there. Things like the price widening, everything with the storm, as we were trying to get it out. We reach out for, Chuck, with the newspaper. We try to get the newspapers involved and feed them as much as we can. Chris Porter is the editor for the Northport and Inglewood Sun. I know Chris well. I've worked with him for 11 years. And so I know if we've got crucial information to get out, I can reach out to Chris and say, hey, this is how things are trending, help us out. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you being on, Billy. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio 97.5 saying be safe out there and be careful on the way home. Billy, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.